Now, Surapadman had a boon from every other god. He has tricked every other god and bagged as many boons as possible, all directed towards him not being able to be executed, because he took promises that neither the gods, nor the divine entities, nor the humans, nor the divine seed of any of these people can kill him. Now, this is when Kartikeya had to be manifested from the fragments of fire from the third eye of Shiv Bhagwan. Now, once that happened, he was nurtured on 6 lotuses by 6 kritikas, and who, when presented in front of goddess Parvati or Parvati Ma, was Muruga born with 6 faces and 12 hands. Now, because of the task he had at hand and because of the complexity involved, it was not just important to kill the demon physically or through physical force or the brute force, but it also needed to have something where the ego or the ignorance had to be destroyed and the one self-prevailing truth or gnana had to prevail. Now, if you look at the 12 hands of Muruga, the divine gods equipped him with all the possible combinations of weapons or astras that they could, leaving the 12th hand empty. Now, if a hand is empty, this got the gods worried, because the moment a hand of a divine entity or a god is empty, by default it assumes the Abhaya Mudra shape. That means if Surapadman or any of the demons had come to terms with him and prayed for mercy, the default Abhaya Hasta would excuse him, and that will defeat the whole purpose of the destruction of evil. Now, this 12th astra had to be much more than any metal, material, any combination of these things, and it just needed not the power but the will to kill ignorance and the ego, to make sure dharma prevails. Now, this is when Bhagwan Shiv needed the grace of Ma Parvati. Now, ages before that, there was a situation when Vasishta Muni had formed a Shivalinga based out of butter. This formed because of churning of the milk from Kamadhenu. Now, this had to be the kshetra where Muruga would descend because of its centered spiritual energy. That is where Muruga would descend to the earth, decide with his generals, form an army, and prepare for the attack towards Surapadman. This had to be the kshetra where Ma Parvati had to descend, hand him over the 12th weapon, which is much more than physical brute force. This had to be the Jnanastra, which means Shiva is the state of consciousness and the dynamic kinetic energy is all Shakti. And Shiva cannot perform without Shakti. Now, Shiva can make sure the brute force is present, make sure that the weapon can go ahead and pierce through the enemy. But does that ensure that truth prevails and the ego is killed forever? No. That is when Ma Parvati hands over the Gnana veil, which is the spear or the veil of Muruga, at this specific kshetra. Now, that is what the Sthala Purana of the Sikkal temple, where the Singaravelan Temple at Sikkal signifies. Now, this is observed through a ritual called as Vel Vangum Thiruvizha that happens every year during a specific cycle of the year. The event depicts the exact phenomenon of Ma Parvati handing over the Gnana veil to Muruga or Singaravelan form in this temple, and it is observed that the brass idol made of panchalohas of Muruga starts sweating, and you will see microscopic droplets of sweat on the forehead and on the cheeks of the brass idol. And if this is not an indicator of the spiritual energy or the raw form of energy that prevails, I don't know what else does.